I never used to believe in the kind of stuff that keeps people up at night. Ghosts, demons, weird unexplained things. All of it just felt like the sort of stuff you'd hear on YouTube channels at 2 a.m. when you were bored. You know the ones. Creepy voiceovers, stock photos, dramatic music. I'd listen to those stories like anyone else, but they never got under my skin. Not until I had my own. I'm 33 now. This happened back in 2020, just after my birthday. I was driving home from a job site 3 states over. Nothing new. I work as an independent contractor, so I spend a lot of time on the road. Mostly back roads, highways, little towns people don't even know exist. It was late March, right around the time the lockdowns started. Roads were quiet, which at the time I actually liked. Less traffic meant fewer headaches. No tailgaters, no slow drivers clogging the left lane. Just me, my truck, and the road. This drive should have been like all the others. I was heading back from northern Minnesota to a small town in Iowa, where I'd picked up a couple of repair contracts for some old farm equipment. The kind of job where they pay in cash and handshakes. I'd left around 4 in the afternoon. Figured I'd drive until I got too tired, then crash in the back of the cab somewhere. I always kept a blanket and pillow in the truck. Nothing fancy, but it did the job. It was a long, empty stretch of highway. Midwestern plains. You've seen one, you've seen them all. Flat, wide-open fields on either side. The occasional farmhouse with a single yellow light in the window. It was early evening, when the sun dipped low, throwing that weird golden-orange light across the land. I remember thinking how peaceful it was. I had a thermos of coffee, some music on old country stuff, mostly Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings, and my GPS set to home. Everything felt routine. No rush, no drama, nothing strange. That's how it always starts though, right? The part of the story where everything feels calm, boring, even right before things go sideways. I didn't know it then, but that night, something joined me on that road. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. And it's followed me in one way or another ever since. I've never told anyone the full story, not like this. My wife knows. Bits and pieces, enough to know something happened that messed with me, but not the details. Not the parts I still wake up thinking about. But I figure it's time. Maybe writing this down will help me make sense of it. Or maybe someone out there has had something similar happen, and they'll understand. Either way, this is what happened. It started with a flicker of movement in the rear view. Mirror, barely anything, just enough to make me check twice. I peeled off the interstate just past dusk. The sun had retreated, leaving behind a darkening sky that swallowed the fields. My headlights cut through the gloom, and the rest of the world felt muted silent, almost as still. I stopped at a small, deserted truck stop just off the highway. It had one pump, an old concrete canopy, and a tiny convenience booth with a flickering neon sign. I flicked the ignition off and let the silence settle around me. Stepping out, I felt the wind bite at my jacket. I hadn't needed a coat most of the drive, but temperatures dropped fast once the sun was gone. I grabbed a fresh cup of coffee from the booth black. No sugar, then walked around my truck, stretching my legs. Nothing out of place, no flickers in headlights behind me, no hum of an engine idling off to the side. Just me, and what felt like too much quiet. Inside the convenience store, I noticed the guy working behind the counter was a young kid, maybe 18 or 19. His name tag read Tyler. He barely looked at me as I paid. His eyes kept drifting to the large back window behind me. I turned and noticed something. The parking lot camera feed was on display, a small black and white screen that showed me slipping coffee into the cup, tying my shoelaces, walking back to the truck. Nothing unusual, but the kid looked like he expected to see something else. Huh, I said, trying to break the silence. Got some locals come by after dark. He shrugged. Not really. Fairly dead out here. I nodded, smiled even though I felt tired, and headed back to the cab. That's where it started. I climbed in and took another sip of coffee. I checked the rearview mirror out of habit. That's when I saw its movement. In the mirror, behind the passenger seat windows, something shifted. I sat still, coffee halfway to my mouth, my eyes locked on the glass. A flash of white glinted in the mirror. Maybe moonlight on someone's jacket, or light reflecting off something metal. I leaned forward, eyes narrowed, nothing still. That flicker happened again, just for a moment. My heart kicked a little harder, probably random, a sign on the pump, or the booth's window catching inside lights. Stay calm, I told myself, but I couldn't shake it. I decided to drive a bit further down the road, hoping to reset whatever my brain was spinning. I pulled out and kept going for about 10 miles before finding a slightly bigger rest area. It had picnic tables and a small loop of lights, still half working. I parked, let the engine run, and took the coffee inside again. It was colder now. That kind of sting that seeps through gloves and jackets. On the walk back, some large trees lined the edge of the lot. Their trunks looked like ghostly pillars in the dim lamplight. The shadows among them pooled like spilled ink. I took a deep breath and told myself I was being foolish imagination, low caffeine, late night fatigue. I'd been driving these roads for years. I'd seen deer dart in front of the lights, big rigs blow past me, pickup trucks loaded with hunting gear. Nothing haunted me. Nothing followed me home. Still, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't paying more attention now. Eyes flicked at every passing car, at every shadow. I locked the door when I returned to the truck. As I sat there, I felt a muscle in my chest tightened like something tapped into my heart. Just once. Just then, the engine shut off. My breath hitched. The street lamps overhead flickered, not power, but light dying, like someone was pulling a dimmer switch. Or my brain. Nothing moved out there. Nothing breathed. Something shifted by the trees, like a person stepping back into the branches. The hair on my neck prickled. Then a voice low, 10 feet away. Female voice. Man, hard to place. Just a beep, a steady beep, like the sound of somebody opening and closing a trunk. Except, my trunk's in back, but I didn't get out. I grabbed the flashlight from under the seat, flipped it on, and flicked open the door. Outside, I peered across asphalt and gravel. My flashlight beam hit nothing but empty lot, cold, concrete, and flickering lamps, but over by the edge of trees, there was movement again. Quick, out of sight, before I could point my beam that way. Hello, I called. Nothing, just empty darkness and that low, soft beep again. Then a flash right side, near my windows, like catching the side of a metal bar reflecting in the light. Just for a moment, I froze. My fingers clenched the flashlight. I didn't wait around. I slammed the door and leaned inside. Back in the cab, I locked every door again. I fired up the engine and backed out without waiting. My hands shook. My breaths were short gasps. A mile up the road, I pulled over at a wider scenic turnout, stopped once more. This time, I shut the engine off, but kept the headlights on. Under the glow of high beams pointed directly at me, I stepped out. No booth, no lights, just black sky and quiet land. I walked around the front of the truck and stared back toward the area where the rest stop sat in the moonlit distance. No lights, no movement, no sounds, except wind in the crops. Still, something didn't feel right. Something had joined me. I climbed back in, closed the door, locked it. I thought aversion hard. As I finally let the engine run again, by the time I pulled back onto the main highway, I was fighting to keep my focus. The flicker in rearview mirror crawled back into my vision. I dismissed it. Shut the radio off. Country music felt like nails on a chalkboard. My engine hum filled the cabin. I tried to center myself. Nothing happened. Nothing should have happened. But I felt watched. I went minutes without noticing anything. Then it came again, another shift. This time I saw it in the east side mirror. A pale shape leaned across the side of the truck, too tall to be human, too still to be just a reflection. I glanced over. Empty lanes, no cars, no shoulders, nothing but open road. Empty sky. My pulse climbed. I focused on the road, both hands tight. On the wheel, I reached into the glove compartment for the pepper spray. I keep in there. Fingers closed around the canister. I rested it on my lap. I told myself that had to be enough. But if I left you here, it'd feel like half the story. Something had joined me. Something I couldn't identify yet. But the tension was climbing. The road had never felt longer. I stayed on Highway 71, heading south through Iowa. It was a straight shot, wide open, the kind of road I could normally drive in my sleep. But not that night. Every second, I was awake. In fact, there's something about silence that isn't really silent. You ever notice that? The way the absence of sound can feel heavier than noise. Like it's pressing in, filling the space where something should be. That's what it was like. In that truck cab. The hum of the road beneath the tires. The low drone of the engine of it could cover up the other feeling. Like I wasn't alone again. I glanced in the rearview mirror. And again, I saw something this time. Clearer than before. Not movement, not a shape exactly. More like a smudge, a blur behind the passenger seat, just out of reach of the cab light. Like the air back there was different, thicker, distorted. My mouth went dry. I didn't stop. I didn't even blink. I just kept driving, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my temples. Then the smell hit. It started like metal, like a coin pressed under your tongue, but quickly curdled into something else. Wet earth, mold, decay. It was faint, but enough to notice. I checked the vents. Maybe I'd driven through a skunk or something. Maybe a dead animal by the side of the road. But I didn't see anything, and the smell was inside. That's when I noticed something even worse. The temperature. The cab was freezing. I glanced at the dashboard. 72 degrees. Heater running like always. But my breath was fogging in front of my face. That's not normal. I rubbed my hands together, tried the heater. Dial turned it off, then back on. Nothing changed. Still freezing, still fogging up, still that godful smell. I opened the windows for a second to clear it out. Just a crack-cold night air poured in, and with it, silence. Too much silence. No wind, no crickets, no distant traffic, just the soft rush of tires on pavement, and me, one guy, one truck, and something else. something I hadn't invited. About an hour later, I pulled into a small gravel turnout off the highway, one of those emergency rest zones where the dots sometimes. Stores, sand barrels, or old cones. No buildings, no lights, just open gravel and empty field. I parked, engine running, cab lights on. I didn't want to stop, but I had to see if someone or something was in that cab with me. I couldn't just keep pretending. I needed to face it. My hands were shaking. I turned slowly in my seat, shining my phone flashlight behind me. Seat empty, floor clean, nothing there, no shape. No smudge, no one hiding in the shadows, but the air back there. Still cold, still wrong, and then the sound. Knuckles, dragging slowly across the roof of the cab. Thump, thump, like someone crawling up there. I froze, didn't breathe. Then the antenna bent sharply, just once, like something heavy had brushed against it. I flung open the door and jumped out. Flashlight already on. I scanned the roof, nothing. No footprints, no claw marks, nothing in the gravel below, and yet I heard it, felt it. That pressure in the air when someone's too close behind you, even if you can't see them. I didn't even bother calling out. I got back in and locked the doors. By the time I reached the next town, Redfield, I think I'd lost track of how many times I checked the mirror. That smudge, still there, but this time, I thought I saw something inside it. A shape, pale, too long, pressed against the inside of the glass behind me, like someone was leaning forward, just barely visible, watching me. Its face was wrong, blurred, like water, rippling over bone. No nose, no eyebrows, just sockets where eyes should be, like it was unfinished. I swerved, pulled into the nearest gas station and jumped out, engine still running, lights still on. I flung open the passenger door. Nothing, absolutely nothing, but the seatbelt on the far side. It was buckled, tight, like someone had clicked it in. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. I hadn't touched that seat all day. I didn't even think to touch it, and yet it was clicked in. I unbuckled it. Slowly, the belt whipped back into place like it had been stretched to long, snapping against the plastic with a loud snap. That sound hit harder than it should have. It made my stomach drop. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the coffee cup. I dumped what was left and left the cup in the trash by the door. I didn't even go inside the store. I just walked in circles around the truck, trying to catch my breath, trying to convince myself I was still sane. That night, I didn't sleep. I drove straight through, past midnight, into 3 a.m. Through towns I barely remember passing. I stopped. One last time, final break before home at a tiny rest area on a back road I knew well. It had 2 vending machines, a bench, and a trail that led into the woods. Normally, I'd never even notice it, but this time, I couldn't not notice it, because someone was standing at the edge of that trail, just outside the reach of the lights, tall, still watching me. I didn't get out. I just sat there, heart racing, engine humming beneath me, eyes fixed on the figure. It didn't move, didn't step closer, didn't blink. It just waited. 10 minutes later, I reversed and left. I didn't stop again until I reached my driveway. By the time I parked the truck, the smudge in the mirror was gone. No pale shape, no pressure in the air, but the passenger seat, still ice cold, as if something had ridden with me the entire time. That night, I kept the lights on in the bedroom. My wife asked why. I said I was just tired, that the road had gotten to me, but when I lay down, I turned to the side and swore I heard the seatbelt click in. Even though I was home, even though no one else was there. 3 nights, that's how long it stayed quiet. After the drive, I thought it was over. I convinced myself it had been exhaustion, road hypnosis, a trick of the mind. You hear enough stories, you internalize the beat's movement in the mirror, cold air, strange sounds, and your imagination does the rest. I stopped, thinking about the thing on the roof, the seatbelt, the smell, even the figure by the woods. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. It came back the 4th night, not on the road this time, at home. In my garage, I was out there finishing a small repair on the truck's tailgate. Just after midnight. It had rained earlier, that sticky, warm spring kind of rain, so everything smelled like wet concrete and rust. I had the garage door open halfway and a single work light hanging from the hood, casting sharp shadows across the space. I was under the rear axle when it started again, a tap soft from inside the cab, not loud, just ... deliberate, tap, tap, pause. TAPI slid out, wrench still in my hand, and stood there. Nothing, no wind, no birds, no damn reason for that sound to happen. I approached the driver's door, slowly, listening hard. My shoes echoed on the concrete. I reached for the handle and the truck shook just once, hard enough to make the side mirror rattle. I jumped back, swore out loud. The cab lights flickered on, even though I hadn't touched the handle, and then I heard it again. The seatbelt click loud this time, intentional, like someone got in. My breath caught in my throat. I reached inside and turned on the dome light fully. The seats were empty, but that smell was back, worse than before. Rancid metal and rot, like a wet animal left in the sun. I stepped back, and then, from the driver's seat speakers that hadn't been used in days, came a faint crackle. Then ... a voice, not words, just breathing, shallow, raspy, not mine. I ripped the key out of the ignition. Silence, but I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The same pressure from that night on the road, like the truck wasn't mine anymore, like I'd brought something back with me and it wanted to stay. I closed the garage, didn't sleep that night. The next day, I checked the truck top to bottom, every compartment, every seat. I even went underneath. Nothing, no signs of tampering, no rodents, no damage. But the mirror inside, the one above the windshield, it had fogged over. Just the glass, not the windows. And on it, traced in that fog, was a smear, like someone had dragged a long wet finger across the surface. A single line, no curves, no writing, just enough to remind me I wasn't imagining it. That night, it escalated. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up gasping, like something had pressed down on my chest. My mouth was dry, and the room was cold. Too cold. I sat up. That's when I heard the truck alarm out in the garage. I ran to the window and looked down. The headlights were flashing, but no one was outside. I threw on shoes, grabbed the bat from under my bed, and bolted down the stairs. The alarm stopped before I even reached the door. I opened the garage. Silence still, except ... Both front doors were open, wide, interior lights glowing. The seatbelt buckled again, and the floor wet, not soaked, not puddled, just ... damp, like something cold had been sitting in there for hours. I stood, frozen. Something had gotten in. Not through the door, not through the house, through me. I didn't go back upstairs that night. I slept in a chair with the truck key around my neck, the bat in my lap, and all the lights on. But at some point, I must have drifted off, because just before dawn, I woke to the soft click of the door opening, except no one was there, and the bat was no longer in my hands. It was across the room, propped against the back door. At this point, you might wonder, why didn't I just get rid of the truck? Believe me, I tried. I listed it the next day, had a buyer lined up within an hour. Good price. Said he'd be by at noon, at 11:45. I backed it out of the garage. At 11:50, I turned to grab the paperwork from inside. At 11:51, I heard the rev. The truck in park roared to life and gunned the engine. I ran outside. It was shaking, like something was inside, flooring the gas with its foot pressed down and face locked on me through the windshield. But no one was behind the wheel, not a soul. The buyer pulled up at 12:05, saw the panic on my face, heard the idle going haywire, and drove off without getting out of his car. I never heard from him again. The next day, I disconnected the battery, stripped out the fuses, and parked the truck at the far end of a friend's field. I didn't explain much, just said I needed to store it. He didn't ask questions. A week passed. No issues, no sounds, no fogged mirrors. I started breathing normal again. But on the 8th night, just before bed, I opened my front door to bring in a package, and sitting at the foot of my porch steps, was my truck key, the same one I left in the ignition. Still warm, still slick with condensation. I didn't touch it. I called my friend. He swore the truck hadn't moved. Said he even checked it earlier that morning. Still there, still disconnected, still locked. But that key, no way it could have gotten there on its own. I sat in the kitchen that night with every light on. The door locked, key in a drawer with a Bible on top of it. I didn't sleep, but sometime after 3 a.m., just as the wind started picking up outside, I heard the sound of a seatbelt clicking, not in the truck, in the living room. It's been 3 months. I haven't driven the truck since it's still parked out in Marcus's field, right where I left it. Flat tires now, rust creeping across the undercarriage, battery long dead. Looks harmless, just an aging rig gathering dust under the open sky. But I don't go near it. Not anymore, not since the night it followed me home. The key incident that was the last time I saw it with my own eyes. That old Ford key lying on my front porch like it had walked there. I don't know how long I stared at it before reaching down and picking it up, but I do remember how heavy it felt in my palm, heavier than it should have, like it was trying to root itself into my skin. I didn't unlock anything with it, didn't test it. I put it in the bottom drawer of my old metal toolbox and taped it shut. The next morning, the tape was still intact, but the drawer was empty. Key gone. No one had been in my garage. No signs of entry, and nothing else missing. Just that single damn key. It didn't make sense, and the more I tried to understand it, the worse things got. First came the dreams. At least I think they were dreams. I'd be in the truck, driving, night outside, no radio, just the hum of tires, and that faint smell of damp leaves and metal in the air. I'd glance at the passenger seat, and it would be empty, but I always knew something was there. Sometimes, in the mirror, I'd catch a glimpse. just for a second. A face, pale and unfocused, like it was submerged in water, watching, leaning slightly forward, like it was listening to the hum of the road and waiting for the moment. I acknowledged it. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the bed, cold as ice. Then came the clicks, asterisk. Always at night, always just before sleep took hold. It wasn't loud at first, just a quiet snap, like a seatbelt catching at first. I told myself it was the house settling, or a floorboard shifting. I even checked the HVAC, but eventually I stopped pretending, because the clicks started moving. One night I heard it in the hallway, next night by the bedroom door, then inside the bedroom, click right next to the bed, like something had sat down, buckled in, and was waiting. I told my wife everything a week later, told her the story, the truck, the shadow, the key, the dreams, all of it. She didn't laugh, she didn't roll her eyes. She just asked me the same question I'd been avoiding. What followed you back? I didn't have an answer then. I'm not sure I do now, but I know what it wants. It's not about the truck. It used the truck, just like it used the road. The rest stop, the silence. It waits for people who are alone, drifting, unseen. You ever feel that way, like no one on earth knows where you are at a given moment? Like you could disappear between mile markers and it'd take days for anyone to notice. That's the space it lives in. That's when it finds you, not with a bang, but with a presence, subtle at first, just enough to make you doubt your senses. A smudge in the mirror, a cold spot in the seat, a whisper behind the static, and then it rides with you home after I told her. She started noticing it too, small things, doors unlocking on their own, lights flickering, not electrical, just a shift in the atmosphere, a heaviness. She swore she heard something moving in the living room when we were upstairs, something that shuffled and clicked, not footsteps shifting weight, like something trying to figure out how to be human. That's when we called someone, a guy who used to be a priest. He didn't do an exorcism or anything dramatic, just came to talk, to feel the space. As he put it, he stood in the garage for nearly an hour, didn't speak a word. When he came back in, he looked pale, like he'd been underwater too long. All he said was, "It isn't in the truck anymore," and then, "Don't invite it, don't feed it." He left after that, didn't return our calls. That was a month ago, and here's the part that still keeps me up. I think it wants me back on the road. I get these urges now, around 2 or 3 in the morning. I wake up completely alert, no fog, no grogginess. Ready, like my body's trying to go somewhere, like the truck is parked outside, engine running, lights on, but it's not. It hasn't moved, and still, I hear it. Sometimes I walk to the window and stare into the driveway, and I swear, just out of reach of the porch light I see 2 faint headlights glowing, no sound, just a presence, waiting. I don't know what it wants, exactly. A host, a ride, someone to carry it farther. But I do know this. It doesn't stop when the engine turns off. It doesn't stay behind. It sits beside you, quiet as fog, and waits for you to forget it's there. And when you do, it tightens the belt, it clicks the lock, and it's yours. I haven't told anyone else. Not because I'm afraid they won't believe me, but because I think belief is what gives it shape. If you're reading this, maybe you're on the road too. Maybe you're alone. Maybe your cab feels a little too cold tonight. If so, check your mirror. Check the seat next to you. And whatever you do, don't single quotes. If it clicks by itself, then I heard it. Just one sound, so soft, it could have been nothing, but it wasn't. It was the click of a seatbelt in the back seat. And I don't have a back seat.